A single, haunting frame of a shirtless man moving through Mississippi woodland, seemingly clutching a thick branch like a weapon. His back to the camera, his posture strained with desperation. To most, it was a mystery, but to Tiffany Carter, it was unmistakable. That was her son, and he was fighting for his life. Rasheem Carter was born on October 28, 1996. A lifelong Fayette resident, he was well known in the local community for his passion for sports and his deep love for his 6-year-old daughter, Callie. A man of ambition, the 25-year-old was saving to reopen his seafood restaurant, which had unfortunately closed during the pandemic. As such, in late 2022, Rasheem took a contract job at the Georgia Pacific chemical plant. He was part of a group of temporary employees staying at a Super 8 motel in Laurel and commuting roughly 20 miles each day to the worksite in Taylorsville. Many of them were from out of state, and many of them didn't get along with their latest recruit. On September 29th, Rasheem sent his mother a detailed text message in which he expressed concerns about his co-workers, and specifically, his new employer. "Me and the owner of this company aren't seeing eye to eye, Mama," he wrote. "If anything happens to me, he's responsible for it. He's got these guys wanting to kill me." On Saturday, October 1st, Rasheem carpooled to work with colleagues that he was on better terms with, though for unknown reasons, they weren't able to take him back. Thus, after work, he went in search of a ride back to the motel. While on the outskirts of town, Rasheem FaceTimed his mother, Tiffany, said that he was being chased by a group of white men in 3 separate trucks and that they were hurling slurs at him. Things were apparently so heated that he not only felt targeted, but feared for his life. He reportedly entered a family dollar store and hid inside, but overheard the cashier tell someone over the phone, "Yeah, he's in here." Following his mum's advice, Rasheem went directly to the Taylorsville Police Department. No officers were present, so instead, he walked to a nearby Exxon gas station. There, he found an officer refueling his car and reported that he had gotten into a verbal disagreement with co-workers and said he felt like he was in danger. He asked the officer for a ride back to Laurel, but was told it was outside his jurisdiction. Rasheem returned to the station with the officer and spent an hour there laying low. Still on the phone with his mother, Rasheem asked if he could stay at the station until he could organize a ride back home, but his request was denied. It's not known where Rasheem spent that night, but the following morning, at 5:30 a.m., he returned to the same police station to ask for a phone charger, saying he needed to contact his loved ones. Since their cable didn't fit his device, they directed him to the Family Dollar. With his phone battery at 1%, Rasheem sent a pin of his location to his mother. Tiffany, who lived all the way in Philadelphia, organized for her friend, Miss Green, to pick him up. Eerily, when Miss Green arrived at the store, Rasheem was nowhere to be found. She drove all around the small town of Taylorsville, but found no trace of the young man anywhere. She asked around, but nobody had seen him. Concerned and unable to reach Rasheem, his family turned to the local law enforcement and made a report. There, they scolded Tiffany for not arriving sooner and told her that Rasheem was disobedient for not staying at the police station as he was told. They clearly didn't realize that Tiffany had been on the phone with Rasheem when they told him that he couldn't stay and that she had heard everything. Days passed with no word from Rasheem. Eventually, Tiffany sought updates from the sheriff's office in Smiths County, of which Taylorsville is a part, only to be told something chilling. Nobody at the department had been told Rasheem was missing. Realizing that the official search was disorganized, or non-existent, Rasheem's family launched an effort of their own. They retraced his last known steps, arriving at the dollar store where he was last seen. The staff presented them with security footage, which showed Rasheem leaving the store at 10:45 a.m. But when asked if the police had ever reviewed it, the employees said no. Nobody had even asked. Then, a property owner in Taylorsville found something troubling. Trail cam footage of an unknown man running through his land at 4:32 p.m. Tiffany immediately knew that the man in the image was her son, and that something wasn't right. In her opinion, the noticeable dark marks on her son's head and left arm weren't shadows as the police asserted, but bruises. The object you're seeing here is a deer feeder. As you can see from this image, there weren't any tree limbs being used to support the tripod, so it seems that Rashim was holding onto this large branch here. But for what purpose? Though a full video does exist, investigators claim that nobody else appears in the footage, and this is the only frame they've publicly released. The exact location of the trail cam hasn't been revealed either, though it's worth noting that according to a write-up by his aunt, Rashim's mobile phone last pinged near Clear Creek, so it's possible that this image was captured somewhere around there. Exactly 1 month after he disappeared, on November 2nd, 2022, Rashim's partial remains were found scattered deep in those same woods. His head, which was located 300 yards from the trail cam, had been severed from his body and was completely stripped to the bone. His spinal cord was found in a totally separate location. Over time, 24 bones and fragments were found scattered across 2 acres, along with his jeans, driver's license, motel room card, and an iPhone battery. Neither the shirt that he had been wearing that day or his iPhone have ever been found. Despite the disturbing circumstances, law enforcement quickly labelled Rashim's COD as undetermined, yet definitively stated that there was no reason to suspect foul play. They suggested wild animals may have been responsible for his death, or that he may have OD'd on some form of illicit substance, an assertion based on no evidence whatsoever. Though it is likely that scavengers were responsible for scattering Rashim's remains, many think that the young father was being hunted in those woods by humans. In December of that year, a disturbing rumour began circulating. A young boy in Taylorsville had reportedly told his classmates that he had seen a body in a hog pen, that the pigs had vomited up a man's remains. That rumour has since proliferated in the so-called sundown town of Taylorsville. In February 2023, when Rashim's family held a peaceful protest there demanding a more thorough investigation, they were met with verbal abuse and threats from several men in the crowd. Men who were known to meet at a diner with the police chief for secretive talks after Rashim's demise. That's according to an interview with a diner employee who chose to remain nameless, apparently out of fear of repercussions. Although that much is hearsay, the chief did post a photo to Facebook showing a man hosing away sidewalk chalk that read, "Rashim's life mattered." His caption? "Little cleanup," followed by a waving emoji. At best, an extremely tone-deaf post. In civil rights attorney Ben Crump's words, "There's nothing natural about this case. It screams out for justice. What we have here is a Mississippi lynching." Rashim's family concur. They remain adamant that he met with foul play, citing that his card had been used to withdraw $500 from his bank account 2 days after he disappeared. Taylorsville PD dispute that the card had been used to make that withdrawal, as Rashim's wallet and all his cards were found in the woods. By the time they got around to speaking with Rashim's co-workers, most had already left the state. The authorities say that none of them are considered suspects, as their GPS coordinates showed that their phones weren't in the vicinity of Taylorsville on the day Rashim vanished. To this day, the case of Rashim Carter remains shrouded in mystery. His family continues to demand answers, and are calling for a federal probe from the US Department of Justice. Although Smith County authorities initially dismissed foul play, they now acknowledge that it remains a possibility that can't be ruled out. Why was Rashim in those woods to begin with? What happened to his shirt and his phone? And how did his life come to an end? The town of Taylorsville is home to only 1,200 residents. Somebody must know the answers to those questions. But whether out of loyalty or fear, they're keeping their lips firmly sealed. It was a rainy Friday evening in the Netherlands when Anna Faber, who got caught in the downpour, decided to take a goofy little selfie for her boyfriend. She pulled a silly face, snapped the photo, and hit send. Minutes later, she would cross paths with a monster and fall off the face of the earth. At the time, Anna was a 25-year-old student living in a shared house in Utrecht and was known for her energy, kindness, and determination. She had earned her bachelor's degree in business administration and was working towards a master's in cultural economics and entrepreneurship. Her dream was to one day run a major museum like the Guggenheim, a lofty ambition to be sure, but she was also the kind of person who balanced hard work with deep friendships. Despite a packed social life and heavy workload, Anna was laser-focused on her goals. To cope with her busy schedule and clear her mind, she often partook in that classic Dutch pastime, cycling. Indeed, she loved nothing more than taking her bike out to the countryside and getting some fresh air. On September 29th, 2017, at around 5 PM, Anna set out on a planned 20-kilometer bike ride. Midway through her cycle, a heavy rainstorm hit. At 6:50 PM, she snapped this selfie, soaked and grimacing, flashing a peace sign. She immediately sent it to her boyfriend, Nathan, hoping it would give him a laugh. And it did. Sadly, it would be the last photo of her he would ever receive. When Anna hadn't returned home by 8 PM, Nathan began to grow worried. He called and texted, but received no response. By 9, he called Anna's mother, who in turn contacted the police. While the investigation got started, Anna's loved ones searched the woods in the dark and rain, combing paths with flashlights until exhaustion forced them to stop. The next morning, the formal search began. 30 officers scoured her route. A police helicopter used thermal imaging to scan the terrain. Still, nothing. Then, on October 3rd, a breakthrough. Friends found a jacket near Amersfoort. It was Anna's. 2 days later, on October 5th, Anna's bicycle was found submerged in a pond in Biluck Park. A day later, her backpack was discovered in the same area. At first, the evidence led nowhere, but DNA recovered from Anna's jacket changed everything. It pointed to a 27-year-old man named Michael P., who was living in a psychiatric facility in Den Dolder. Due to strict Dutch privacy laws, which do extend to convicted criminals, Michael's last name wasn't revealed to the public in Holland. That being said, such laws don't apply where I'm from, and I have absolutely no moral qualms revealing that his full name is Michael Ponhaus. What the Dutch media could reveal was that he had served time for SAing 2 teenagers at gunpoint in 2010, a crime he once described as a dream come true, and that he was now being treated for aggression and addiction at the clinic. Knowing what type of character he was, the police were particularly rough when they arrested him. Through strategic interrogation, detectives persuaded Michael to confess, and as it would turn out, this final photo of Anna was taken mere minutes before he did the unthinkable. According to Michael's account, he had taken his scooter out for a ride near the clinic. As part of his reintegration process, he had been granted unsupervised leave from the clinic for the evening. It was while out riding that he accidentally crashed into Anna, knocking her from her bike. Though he initially intended to help her, she insisted on calling the police. Michael's scooter was uninsured, and thus, he panicked. Instead of facing the consequences of his actions, he instead pulled out a blade, destroyed Anna's phone, and forced her into the woods. What followed was a brutal violation. He then bound Anna's hands with zip ties, placed her on his scooter, and drove her to the remote terrain of Soesterberg Air Base. Fearing that her screams might attract the attention of passers-by, Michael panicked yet again, and, in a sudden act of violence, slit Anna's throat. After taking her life, Michael tried to cover his tracks. He moved Anna's body, scattered her belongings, and used his mother's car to drive to a childhood haunt in Zeewolde, where he finally buried her. Then, as if nothing had happened, he cleaned the car, visited family, spent time with his pregnant girlfriend, and went back to using drugs. after Michael's confession on October 12th, Anna's body was recovered. Though Michael himself claims that the crime wasn't premeditated and that it was a spontaneous act, others can't help but wonder whether he went out searching for prey that evening, and if he was already watching Anna from a distance when this selfie was taken. Michael had a deeply troubled profile after all. Borderline personality disorder, antisocial traits, and psychopathic behavior, compounded by long-term addiction. He was impulsive, violent, and emotionally unstable. And yet, for some bizarre reason, he was permitted to leave his clinic 3 times per day and was somehow able to get a blade through security without anyone realizing. In July 2018, Michael Bunhouse was sentenced to 28 years in prison, followed by indefinite psychiatric detention. He was also ordered to pay over €100,000 in compensation to Anna's family. Additionally, he was convicted of attacking 5 staff members during his psychiatric evaluation before trial. In June 2020, his sentence was reduced by 4 months after it was determined that his rights had been violated during his arrest. He had been tackled and sustained a broken shoulder and other injuries. Anna Faber's slaying shook the Netherlands. The subsequent inquiry revealed major gaps in communication between the institutions responsible for monitoring offenders. For example, the Den Dolder Clinic was unaware that Michael had previously served time on SA charges, as he had refused to let the prison share that information. The clinic only knew about his history of aggression and substance abuse. A report later found that no one had assessed the risks associated with his behavior or evaluated the likelihood of him reoffending. Reforms followed. Stricter leave policies, better risk assessments, improved interagency coordination, and tighter supervision for those granted freedom from psychiatric facilities. Anna's story is one of unimaginable loss, but also of change. Her slaying sparked reforms that could save lives. Her memory endures, not only through the people who loved her, but in a system now trying, however imperfectly, to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. I'd like to end this segment by giving a shout out to The Lowest Crime, who's covered many Dutch cases on her channel, including this one. She only has 3 subscribers at the moment, but has some really well-researched podcast-style uploads. Be sure to go and check her out. Link in the description. He claimed to heal the broken. He offered solutions to sensitive problems. He sold love by the bottle. But behind the ritual candles and whispered incantations, an Indonesian mystic was orchestrating something far darker. On the outskirts of Medan, North Sumatra, lived a man named Ahmad Suraji. By trade, he bred cattle, but by reputation, he was Datu, a revered dukun, or witch doctor, who specialized in spiritual services. People flocked to him from all over Indonesia, seeking his powers, especially women. They handed over good money, up to $400 per visit, for love potions, fertility rituals, trinkets that could bring beauty and wealth, and spells that would keep their husbands faithful. But unbeknownst to anyone other than his innermost circle, Suraji had a thirst for even greater power, and he knew of only one way to quench it. On April 24th, 1997, 21-year-old Sri Kamala Dewi, who was looking for a way to reconnect with her estranged husband, decided to pay Suraji a visit. That night, she hired a teenage rickshaw puller named Andreas and asked him to take her to the infamous Datu. She asked him not to tell anyone where she was going, likely out of embarrassment. They arrived at his residence in Sei Semayang village shortly before midnight, at which point Dewi said that she didn't need a ride back. Maybe she intended to walk home. Maybe she thought she'd be back before anyone noticed that she was gone. She wasn't. The next morning, her parents searched the streets of Medan for their missing daughter, showing passers-by this image, the last ever taken of her, in hopes that someone had seen her. 3 days later, a farmer searching for livestock feed noticed something strange in a nearby sugarcane field. Heavy rain had softened the ground, peeling back the topsoil. Just 10 meters in, he saw a mound that didn't belong. He alerted the village head, who gathered a posse of men, including Saraji, and went to investigate. As they dug, a foul stench rushed up from the earth. Thick, putrid, inescapable. Still, they pressed on. And then they found her. A female body, disrobed, buried in the earth with her head facing in a very specific direction, toward Ahmad Saraji's house. Dewi's mother heard about the discovery and immediately rushed to the scene. As soon as she laid eyes on the corpse's feet, she knew it was her daughter. Her family was shattered, but none of them could explain how she had ended up in a shallow grave in the middle of nowhere. By morning, the police arrived. That's when Andreas, the rickshaw puller, came forward and told them about the victim's final taxi ride. Dewi said that she wanted to go to the witch doctor's house. I was curious, because it was a little late, so I asked her why she was going there. She scolded me and told me not to be so nosy. That tip was all the police needed. They raided Saraji's home. Inside, they found Dewi's belongings. Her handbag, her dress, her bracelet. At first, Saraji denied everything, claiming that he had found the items in a field, but the evidence spoke for itself. And under questioning, he admitted to 16 other murders. Investigators later found a stash of jewelry and clothing tied to 25 more missing women in his home. Eventually, Saraji cracked. He confessed to killing over 42 women in the span of 11 years, from 1986 to 1997. According to him, the method was always the same. A woman would arrive at his home, seeking his services. He'd charge them his customary $400 fee, dig a hole in the sugarcane plantation, ask the woman to sit in it with her legs stretched out, bury her up to her waist. He told all of them that it was a necessary part of the ritual. Then he'd kneel down and strangle them, sometimes with his hands, other times with a length of cable. Once they had stopped breathing, he would lean in and suck the saliva from their mouths. The self-proclaimed sorcerer believed that he was chasing immortality one corpse at a time. Why? Because the ghost of his father, Jogan, told him so. In a dream, his dear old dad, also an occultist, materialized from beyond the grave and told Saraji, "Drink the saliva of 72 dead women, and your powers will grow." In a statement to the police, Saraji admitted, "My father didn't specifically advise me to kill people, but I was thinking it would take ages to find 72 women who had passed from natural causes. I was trying to hit my target as fast as possible. I took my own initiative." After ending their lives, Saraji would remove their clothes to speed up decomposition and twist their heads to face his home. This, he claimed, made his black magic more potent. Excavation teams soon unearthed pile after pile of human remains, all female, all in various stages of rot, all facing towards Saraji's home. One was as young as 11. The oldest was just 30. Most were never reported missing and remain unidentified to this day. Investigators believe that many were too ashamed to admit they had visited a shaman for help, hence why nobody linked their disappearances back to the mystic. During a televised reenactment, viewers watched in disbelief as Saraji placed mannequin heads into the earth and walked police through every gruesome step, right there in the same field. In perhaps the most stomach-churning moment, he even demonstrated how he sucked the saliva which dripped from his victims' mouths. Though they didn't feature in the reenactment, he actually had 3 wives, all sisters, who helped him cover his tracks, and at least one, the eldest, Tumini, helped him carry out the slayings. Given that he only operated at night, some of Soraji's clients were too scared to follow him into the enormous sugarcane field alone, and thus he would sometimes bring Tomini with him to put them at ease. She would then help bury their remains. On December 11th, 1997, prosecutors presented a staggering 363-page indictment. Despite the mountain of evidence against him, Ahmad Soraji insisted that he was innocent and claimed that he had been tortured into giving his confession, but the jury weren't convinced. In 2008, Soraji was tied to a tree and executed by firing squad. His first wife, Tomini, believed to be his main accomplice, was also given a capital sentence, but her punishment was later reduced to life in prison. His other two wives, Tomina and Natia, were released without conviction. Though their role in the caper remains unclear, they were most certainly aware of what Soraji was up to, and had even helped to advertise his services. To protest their release, villagers destroyed their home, and the two sisters were forced into hiding. In the end, the man who sought power through death met his own at the end of a rifle. Soraji aimed to harvest 72 souls. He confessed to reaching 42, but investigators believe the real number could be higher, much higher. In his absence, the sugarcane of Medan has grown tall, but locals say it's less sweet than it used to be. They can't help but wonder if the soil below may still be harboring Soraji's secrets. A huge thank you to my supporters here on YouTube and over on Patreon, especially my biggest supporters: Holly Lyons, Thomas Almond, Alana Pons, Asiamina, Alicia 1996 V, Azrael Warakai, Aðalsteinn Traustason, Colin Monsma, Connor Louthan, Emzetz, Farewelltattoosjaxfl, George Lopez, Gina Valera, Gracearchie, Hamish, John Stuart Muller, Michelle F. Granfield, Mistyblue Longie, Peter Lulgjuraj, TNS Mum, Terry Ford, and Yokai. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Remember to hit that like button, and I'll see you all again very soon.